So in our WebDriver series, we were looking into how to use the GitHub Actions, right? So we have seen how to use the GitHub Actions to execute our test cases locally or by using the GitHub local server, and also we have seen that how to use the GitHub Actions to trigger the test cases directly into the browser stack by using the secrets, the GitHub secrets, right, where we don't really need to have hard code all this username and key. Now today we are going to see a situation where, like, let's say that if any of the team member want to access or execute this on a manual basis or on a ad hoc basis. Now if you see that all these YML files or the GitHub actions that we were using, these are mostly to use that in terms of some kind of what do you call trigger point, right? Like either you can push something to a particular branch or you send a pull request. That's how it auto triggers. But there are certain instances where, let's say that one of the team member want to use it on a ad hoc basis. They can just go to the YML file or to the GitHub actions and trigger it at that instance only. That's something called as manually. Now how to achieve that? Now to do that, we have something called as workflow dispatch. Okay, so let me show you that. So if you go to the GitHub syntaxes, right, GitHub event syntaxes, now there is something called as dispatch. Now what this does, this basically gives you an option where you can trigger manually from the GitHub repository directly. I'll show you that. Now there is a catch though. Now the thing is that we have to always use this workflow dispatch from the main branch itself only. Okay, in the sense, whenever you want to start for the first time, right, you have to take this workflow dispatch from the main only. But I will show you how to first take it as a template and then how to use that in other branches as well. Now that is one part of this story. Now let's say when we are really executing into this, right, now there are certain parameters we need. Now when we are executing directly by triggering it on based on the push or pull request, we have some variables, right? Now I'll talk to you one scenario. Now think about, I want to create one workflow dispatch or the manual trigger which would hold both the conditions, like whatever we have here, right, this npm run wdio. Now this runs locally, in the sense if I'm triggering from GitHub actions, it will run into the GitHub server. Now when I'm going to the browser stack, the command changes, right? It is a different command, but I want to have both of these options. Like if I say that, okay, I want to run it into GitHub, then it should run this particular command. Okay, and when I say that when I want to wish to run that into the browser stack, it should run this command. So some kind of parameter that I need to provide, right, to the workflow dispatch. So GitHub actions do provide certain options into that as well. Now I'll show you a couple of options. Now there is a block though they have provided. Now if you see that, if you guys recall about Jenkins parameterization, right, where you can give couple of options there, like you can specify on what browser you need to run this. You can even give your own username and password as well from the Jenkins parameter. Now what does we do? We take those parameter values and then we take it to the code, and based on that we trigger our test cases. The same thing, like if you see that we can have some drop downs as well, we can have some text box, even we can have some kind of boolean like a checkbox, so you can check or uncheck that. And then to access these particular fields, right, we can use something called as a dollar, and then there is a double curly bracket starting, and we need to have this command. Okay, github dot event dot inputs dot the name of that field which we are using there, so that we can get the value there. Okay, now if it is a text box, if it is a checkbox, then we can use something called as like this actually. So we can say that github events input dot the name of that particular field equal to true. It means that when the checkbox is checked, then this condition will be true, and when the checkbox is unchecked, then it will become false. Like that we can use these conditions inside our GitHub actions. So based on these values we can use the if, and we will trigger different commands. That is what we are going to do. Now enough of this theory. Now let's implement this one into our code base. Then you will have a clear picture of what I'm trying to explain here. For this, as I told, that I have to start it from my main branch only. So for this, I will be taking this browserstack.yml file. I'll just copy this and I will paste it here. Okay, now I'll just rename. So this particular YML file will help me to run it into the GitHub and also into the browser stack with a dispatch. So even you can rename this one in this way also. I won't be using the push pull request and all those things. Let me copy this entire thing and then paste it here. Okay, now workflow dispatch, instead of a push pull request and all those things, whenever I say workflow dispatch, it means that we have to trigger it manually. And I will be giving some name to this which will appear into my GitHub repo, and I'm taking not log level. Let's say that I'm taking to make sure that what kind of environment that I need to run it. So it means that I'll just say something called as a platform. Now here I'll give some description. I'll say that select way to run. Okay, and here I will make it as required as a true, and the default I will just say that GitHub is the default selection. Type is choice because I want to have a drop down there, and I will say GitHub. I'll say that browser stack. If you have Sauce Labs or anything else, you can even add those many options there. For me at this moment, there will be a drop down which will come into the manual trigger, which will have options GitHub and browser stack. Now the next thing is that some if condition I want to show, so I'm keeping it as artifacts. What is artifacts? I'll just say that reporting, let's say. Okay, so attach reporting or not. So in that case, I'll just give here required is like we can just make it as normal only. Type is boolean. Okay, boolean in the sense what will happen, it will come like a what you call like a checkbox. If you say that artifacts, like here I'll say that artifact reporting. Okay, so if I will take this as checkbox checked, then I will be running this particular code actually. So based on some conditions, you can run these particular flows or the steps as well. So that is what I'm going to showcase here. Fine. Now how to use it? See, as I told that it starts from the main branch, and after that I can run it in any of the sub branches. At this moment, what I'm going to do, say whenever I will push this particular file, right, YML file, it should create a name into the GitHub Actions, right, like for an instance. So I want to create one workflow here actually, which upon I'm clicking that, it should give me a manual trigger option. That is what I'm going to do that. Okay, fine then. So now let me push this one also. So whenever I push this, say at this moment, this particular CIB stack dispatch option is not present here. To make it present here, first I need to push this particular code, right? Now on the push command, it should have all these options settled down for me. Now at this moment, what I'm going to do is that on which branch actually, for sure I want to have it into the main branch. I'll just go into this much only, and I'm just saying that activate this particular workflow dispatch when I'm doing a push command. Now at this moment, I really don't want to do anything, so I'll just make sure that all these things are deleted actually. Nothing, it's a simple base template. I'm trying to create it here. Okay, fine. Now I'm done with that. Now let me push this particular thing. So I will say that CB stack. Now if you see that at this moment I had only 2 different YML files, right? But if I refresh, I should get one. And if I go to the Actions tab, and you can see that before this option was not available, but I'm getting this option, and you see that it didn't auto trigger actually. And you can see that there is a run workflow. It's a new option it got added, which we don't have actually here. You see that there is nothing, but because it is a workflow dispatch command, that's why this option is coming. It never auto triggers that. And if you go to this, you see that it is asking which branch you want to run it. For sure, at this moment, this particular YML file is present into the main branch. So I can run it from the main branch only. We'll see how to use other branches. Now you can see that there is a drop down which is appearing here, GitHub and bstack. The GitHub is our default selection, and the artifact reporting, you can see that I can check or uncheck it. Okay, now if I run this, there is just one command that is going to run, and that is nothing but your checkout phase actually, and you can see that the checkout phase is running. Okay, now we are done with that. Now see, the first thing is that this activity whatever we done, just to make sure that to appear this particular workflow here. Now see, normally what happens, this workflow dispatch, right, we don't really do from the main branch. We always try to do from a sub branch or a feature branch. Let's say that you are working on a new feature actually, and you want to run that to make sure that your GitHub Actions really works fine or not. You don't want to really run into the main, because into the main branch your new changes might not have even merged also. Now that is where at the beginning stage you will be creating a dispatch YML file so that the action should appear here. That's it. Now the next thing what I'm going to do, I'll come back to my code and I will create a new branch out of this. Okay, observe that what I'm trying to do here actually. Now practice branch I'm creating. Let's say that this is the branch where I have changed a lot of new things, I have added it. Now here is something I want to really add different steps so that my test cases can run here. Let's say I have added couple of new test cases and I want to run it into the browser stack or into the source labs or into the GitHub itself only. So here is something, I'll write the logic. Now for this I will be copy pasting couple of things which I have deleted last time. So I'll make sure I'll come back here, I'll copy this one, and for sure it has to be in this way. Fine. Now see, checkout for sure I will be doing whether I have to run it into the GitHub or into the browser stack. Setup node also should happen with a specific version. Now this is where actually I'm going to change actually. Sorry, even till install it is good, all the dependencies. But this particular command, right, this particular set will be changing based on where I want to run. For an instance, like let's say, if I want to run into the GitHub, what I'm going to do, I will be copy pasting this one here. Okay, now here. So there are two things are there. Okay, one is into the GitHub local run, another is into the browser stack. Now I cannot have these two options, right? I need to have either one of this, a kind of a trade-off, and that is something will be depending on what choice the user is choosing actually into this GitHub here. If I'm choosing as let's say GitHub, then it should run this particular command, npm run wdio. Now to add that, there is a syntax you can use like this, if condition. This is not related to the dispatch but into a normal GitHub Actions syntax actually. Now the question comes, how do I access this particular field value? Now for that I can use the $sign. I've shown that, right? And instead of this message, what is that? We have platform, right? So I'll copy this one actually here. My platform equal to GitHub. Okay, if that selection is GitHub, then you try to run all these things. A better option, I'll keep it into this. Okay, so name, I'm taking a name, and after that, if my what you call selection is GitHub, then I will make sure to run this one like this. So I will say that test on GitHub server. I'll just right click, write like this, and I will say that test on browser stack. Okay, now this is fine, right? Now I have to put another if condition. There is no if else condition, keep that in mind. So here I will say that if, again the same, I can even copy paste this entire line, and I will say that this is B stack, right? Now if it is browser stack option I'm choosing, then I will set the environmental variables, and then I will be calling this B stack, that is nothing but my browser stack dot this configuration file, as simple as that. Okay, fine. Now another if condition I need to put for this artifacts, right? So let's do that as well. So I'll just do like this, and here I'll keep it like this, and here I'll put if condition. Okay, and here instead of this I will say artifacts. Okay, now artifacts, it is there, right? Now it's a boolean, so how do I use it? So instead of this I can just say it like this, and actually this is a checkbox, right? So I really don't need this. If any string I want to take it, right, that's where I'm using this dollar and then two curly brackets. Now in this case I don't really need that, so I'm saying if the user is checking the checkbox to create the artifact, then only you execute this. Like for an instance, if I'm showcasing you guys here into the UI, let's go to our GitHub Actions. If somebody is checking this checkbox, then only you go with this particular artifact creation. Because I'm using into the practice, I won't really specify this. Now this entire thing will be executing if I'm pushing these changes into the practice branch, and I'm ready with my practice branch here, right? Okay, so I'm pretty much done with my different things. If everything goes fine, then we can even execute the from the UI. Okay, now let me push this particular changes into the practice branch. So let me go to this, and I will say that okay, because it's a new branch, it is even asking a step to publish this particular branch. And let's go to our GitHub repository and try to see that. Okay, and you can see that in this particular command is getting executed into this. Okay, and if I go inside this, and you can see that it is directly running into the practice branch only directly. Okay, because I have given the push command, right? This is for the first time, so no need to worry about that. It didn't execute anything because we haven't given this if else parameters, right? These values were not yet set. Actually, if you see that it auto triggered based on this particular push command, but it didn't execute anything, and that's where that is what we wanted, right? Now you just go here and you see that here it is coming. Now which branch? For sure I want to execute into the practice branch at this moment. Let's say I want to run it into the GitHub, and I don't want the artifact to be what do you call captured here. Just run it into the GitHub, and you should see that this particular step will be ignored based on this if condition. So I'm just clicking on the run workflow. Now this is purely manually it is executing that, and you can see that it started the execution. There is nothing really different that you will get it. It is basically only that run workflow command or that button is appearing with those inputs. And you can see that everything got executed here. Your installed all the dependencies, and here you can see that test on GitHub server only got executed. The other one, test on bstack, that is nothing but this particular step, right, didn't execute because this condition didn't satisfy. I have chosen to run it into the GitHub, and that is the magic. Actually here it is happening, and you can see that the artifact also didn't got created here. Now let's run into the browser stack with this artifact generated. Now for this, see, no code change, nothing. I will come back to my this particular workflow. I'll simply run this one, and I will choose practice because that's where I have to execute all of my test cases, right? And this time I'm choosing the B stack and artifact reporting. It means that you have to attach the artifact. Now I'm just running this workflow. After some time it will be starting, and you can see that the workflow run was successfully requested. Now it is even triggering that manually. and you really can't see anything. It is now executing into my browser stack account directly. Okay, it got executed successfully, and you can see that the okay, the artifact also did not execute. I think there is some issue happened. Probably this if condition is not really proper. Let me see that what is the problem here. You know what, it has to be enclosed with a code. Actually, that's how it is treating. So this returns a string actually here, the checkbox checked or unchecked. I have to push actually this code also, because this got changed, right? Actually, I should have removed this push command also, because this entry got created right into the practice, so I really don't need anything. But that doesn't really matter a lot. Let me just make sure that if it really came here or not into the practice branch. Go to, yeah, you can see that this came. So now I should be good to go. So I'll go here, and this just executes. There is no particular command it should run. Okay, this is, don't worry about this. Now I will just say that run it into the practice branch, and then GitHub. Let's say I'm running into the GitHub, but I want to attach the artifact. Now let's run this, and you can see that the trigger started all the steps to run here. And if I go inside, it should give me the logs. And you can see that even the upload artifact is also running. That was just problem with that code that I didn't enter that. And how do you access it? As usual, just go to this, click on this, and you should see the artifact created. You can just download and access that particular HTML report out of that. Okay, so that is how actually you can use the workflow dispatch command, and you can run this in any of your branches actually. Like, it is recommended to not to use the main branch as a default, because depending on your test cases, depending on your way to run these test cases or the tests, you can accommodate, or you can change this particular YML file. Okay, if not, then you can simply copy paste this particular YML file whenever you are running in from any other branches actually, and then you can just choose here which branch you are running. Like, you can just choose here which branch, and you can have lot of different like these fields actually. I think there is a condition actually, you can have only up to 10, I think up to 10 different what do you call this kind of fields that you can use it like that. But I think that much is enough. You can see they have given a kind of an example where you can even have a text box also. Let's say that you don't want a drop down, you want just a text box. Like, in a sense, see, even I can say select where to run. Instead of a drop down, I can have a text box. But the text boxes are a bit tricky, because the user or the team member should know the exact spelling or exact abbreviation of that what I'm going to use it. Even we can use these things. We can add a category section. Based on the categories, we can run certain test cases from here. Even those things also we can do. For an instance, I will give you a quick example. Let's say that you are changing this particular code base or some test cases related to your login test. Now, when you want to run this by using the GitHub action, you don't want to run all the test cases, right? You might just want to run the login related test case. So you can group these test cases, whatever inside the specs. We will see in our upcoming sessions how to group these test cases and run it. I have only one test case, so always I'm taking it as a default. But when we have multiple test cases, that's where we can use this one. Okay, so you can have a category section here. You can run this workflow, so only login related test cases will be running there. So that is how you can handle this GitHub actions. So hope you guys got an idea about how to use the workflow dispatch, and you can give try with the different conditions, different options, and let me know if you face any issues. So that's pretty much it for today. Hope this session is useful. Stay tuned and do subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.